Hello everyone, and welcome to another Collodion chat. So today we're going to be doing a build video, basically just going and walking you through the process of building the 3D printed plate holder models that I'm going to be publishing at the same time as this video. So today we're going to be assembling a 4x5, but the 5x7 and 8x10 will also be released. And the assembly procedure for those is going to be effectively the same with some small changes that we will mention as we go forward. So let's start out with an inventory. Just take a quick look at what we've got here. So these are our 3D printed parts. All of these parts are going to print in their default orientation. You can just drop them around the print bed and print them as is. It's a change from the previous version. I finally this time decided to stop being lazy and get the correct orientation in the files. So what have we got here? We have got body_bottom.stl. You're going to want one copy of that, as well as body_top.stl. And these two together form the body of the plate holder. And these just kind of mesh together with this ridge around the top that interfaces with this trough around the outside of the bottom piece, so that when they seal together, they're nice and light tight. You don't have to worry about anything fogging through the gap in between them because it'll be covered by that ridge. We also have the lid.stl, which is of course the lid. It goes on the back of the plate holder, keeps the plate nice and light tight, no problems there. We also have this. This is retaining_tab.stl, and this is the retaining tab. This is the piece that is going to fit into the front of the plate holder to lock it into place in the camera when you're ready to shoot. And then finally we have our two light_trap.stls. This is one file. You're going to want to print two copies of it. And these are what's going to form the light trap. So we have these slots on the bottom of the body_bottom.stl piece, and these are just going to slide in there, and magnetic repulsion is going to push them up into the front of the light trap. So these basically act as little plastic shutters, keeping the plate holder nice and light tight when the dark slide is withdrawn. So that's all the printed parts. The only other thing that you're going to need to add to this is glue. I'm using super glue here. You'll need either super glue or epoxy for the magnets. And I've also used ABS glue for my plate holders in the past, which makes a very strong kind of, chemically welded together connection. But in this case, I'm already using the super glue for the magnets. It's very convenient and it's good enough. So I'm just going to use it to glue the body together as well. And then finally, I've got magnets. You can see I've got four sizes of magnets here. We got 3mm, 4mm, 5, and 6. All of these are nominally 1mm thick. So the 4x5 uses 3mm magnets for the light traps and 4 for the body. The 5x7 uses 3 for the light traps and 5 for the body, and the 8x10 uses 4 for the light traps and 5 for the body. You might be wondering why I have 6mm magnets here. I got these to experiment with when I was kind of starting out on this project, and I figured I would go up 1mm in magnet size for each size of the plate holder, and the 8x10 did in fact have plenty of room for 6mm magnets, but I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant about magnets here. If you don't care about magnets, you might want to fast forward. But I got these magnets, right? So I just kind of ordered an assortment of magnets from Amazon. I got some 3s, some 4s, and 5s. And when I got the 6s, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but these actually look kind of visibly thinner than the other sizes. And so I assembled an 8x10 holder with these 6x1 magnets. And it was a disaster. In fact, I think I actually have the parts over here. Here's the back, and I think I lost the lid. But yeah, the lid would actually not hold onto the plate holder if you turned it upside down. That's how weak those magnets were. And so I got some calipers out and started looking at the thicknesses. And if we start with the 3mm magnets, and we check the thickness of these are a hair over 1mm thick. They're like 1.04 basically. And then if we go over to our 5mm magnets, or sorry, our 4mm magnets, these are a hair under 1mm thick. They're about 0.98 millimeters. Also fine, well within kind of reasonable bounds. And if we look at our 5mm magnets, these are also just a hair under, about 0.98. So everything is still pretty straightforward here. You know, we don't expect these to be ultra high precision parts, but then we get to these 6mm magnets, which look visibly pretty thin, and sure enough, they're about 0.82 millimeters. So almost 20% of their thickness is missing. And when that first happened, I figured that I had probably gotten a bad supplier. So I ordered another set of 6x1 magnets from another supplier and got the exact same result. They're actually mixed in here. You can't tell the difference. I'm guessing they probably all come out of the same factory and just get sold by different resellers. So that got me curious, because I had also previously ordered some 6x2 magnets. And so I got these out, and sure enough, these are only about 1.65 millimeters thick. So they're also missing almost 20% of their nominal thickness, which of course impacts, you know, the power of the magnet. And I don't really have any way to verify what they're actually made out of, if there's really any neodymium in there. And I don't have a great scientific means to measure how strong these magnets are. I don't have any kind of fixture for measuring the force. But I will say, just from, you know, kind of the feel by hand of trying to pull them apart, these 6x2s actually feel slightly weaker than the 5x1s. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Like I said, these are 3 separate batches of 6mm magnets that I bought from 3 different Amazon sellers. I don't know how this works. I'm sure there are probably good 6mm magnets out there, but I figure most people who assemble my plate holders are going to be using, you know, random magnet source from Amazon or similar sellers. I'm not going to go way out of my way to find, you know, kind of the best magnet source. So I went back to using 5mm magnets for the 8x10 holder, which works fine. They hold really well. I just added one more magnet to the 8x10 size. But yeah, if anyone out there has some kind of connection in the magnet industry, if you have an explanation for why 6mm seems to be the size where magnets just kind of fall off the cliff in terms of thickness and holding strength, I would love to know, because I'm kind of intensely curious about this, but I have no way of figuring it out. So anyways, that's my somewhat pointless magnet rant. Now let's get back to our assembly. So we're going to start by placing the magnets in body_bottom.stl. So the way that we need to do this is we're going to take a bunch of 4mm magnets, and you want to make sure that this is always consistent, right? So the same side needs to go down into the holder every time. And on bigger prints, what I like to do is just put the whole stack in and then slide it off, leaving one magnet in the bottom. That doesn't really work in this particular situation because these ridges really get in the way. And the 4x5 size in particular is very tricky just because there's not a lot of room for your fingers in here. So what I like to do to make sure that I keep things straight is I use a marker and I just mark the face of the magnet that's going to go into the holder. That way when I place the magnets, if I look down and I see a purple mark looking back up at me, I know that I have made a mistake. So I'm going to start out by marking 3 magnets and also marking the top so I know where to go back to the stack. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with these 3 magnets in the top of the holder. And these positions are specifically for operating the light traps, which have a mechanism we'll see a little bit later. But one thing I want to note that's special about these 6 positions is that there's a very, very thin layer of plastic between the light trap spaces in the bottom here and the magnet spaces in the top. In fact, if you're printing with 0.4 millimeter layers, there's literally 1 layer of plastic bridging over here, which means that it's pretty fragile. So you're going to want to make sure that you don't kind of smash them in there because they will break right through. And when you place your glue, you're going to want to put some glue around the edges of these cavities to make sure that the magnet is getting glued into the stronger, the stronger shell of the holder, and not just those weak plastic strands in the bottom. It will hold up well enough for you to do the gluing, but I would not trust it as kind of a long-term support surface. So make sure you get some glue on those edges. Another thing is I've had trouble finding tools to manipulate magnets with because most of my tools are steel, and of course magnets like to stick to steel. So, I don't have any plastic tweezers in the house. And what I ended up doing is taking this little DC barrel connector, which just happens to be a very good size for pressing these magnets into place. And so I use these when I need to get in here where my finger won't reach. So I'm just going to go ahead and place these first 3 magnets now. Just going to get a little bit of glue in the edges of those cavities. And one at a time, put them in, marked face down. And I'm going to use my little barrel jack to get that in there. Magnet number 2. Also gluing the edges. And let's place this. Nope. You can see you have to be very, very careful here. But with a little bit of caution, it's not too difficult to get these into place. Getting the edges again. Okay, there we go. So our first 3 magnets are placed, and now we're going to place the next 3 right next to them, because these are going to be the most difficult magnets in the whole project to place, because they're going to want to pop out of location and flip over on top of their companions right next to them. This is why I really like super glue for this project in particular, because it will set up quickly enough that I don't need to put a clamp or anything on these. They will stick in place pretty quickly within like 20 or 30 seconds if I just hold it in there with my finger. So for these 3, it's the same thing. We need to get some glue on these edges to make sure that it's good and stuck into the holder. And I'm just going to put them kind of in the well here. Oops, I dropped it. Or I lost control of it. And I got to make sure it doesn't stick to the other magnet. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to put it right in the slot here, and then I'm going to slide it into place. And I'm going to press it in, and I'm going to hold it down with my finger until that super glue gets a hold of it. So I'll give it a good 20 or 30 seconds here. I can still feel it shifting anytime I move my fingers. I think we may have actually lost some of the super glue when it flipped out the first time, so I'm just going to put a little more in there. try this one more time. Might need to remark it. As you can see, these little magnets can be very tricky to get exactly where you want them. Let's try this one more time. And we stuck to the other magnet again. Get that in place. And there we go. Okay, let's hold that down a little bit longer. There we go, the glue is holding it, keeping it from flipping out of its place. So let's do the next one with plenty of super glue in there, including the edges. Get the marked face down and slide it into place. And then replace my finger with this. And I lost control. Come on. There we go. Let's see if we can get that to hold. I promise these are the 3 most difficult magnets in the entire project. Just the fact that they're placed so quickly together makes them a lot of fun to manipulate. Okay, that one's holding, which leaves us with one more to go. More super glue in there, especially on the edges. I'm going to slide this one in the slot. Just get that right down in. Nope. And we lost it. Come on, buddy. There we go. Okay, hold that for a few seconds. And it's staying put. Good. Okay, so the rest of this is going to be much simpler. We have got, make sure I get the right side of this marked. These marks really will save you from doing anything that you will regret later with the magnets. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11 magnets left to place. So I'm going to go ahead and mark all 11 magnets up front and just fast forward through that. Okay, there's all 11 of our magnets marked. Now these ones are easier to place because there's not going to be anything trying to rip them out. So for these, all I do is I put a little dab of glue in the indentation that it's going to fit into, and then I just slide it right into place and press it in there with my finger. Or sometimes the barrel jack for the corners where my fingers can't get in. And now I'm just going to fast forward through placing all of these magnets. All right, and that is all of our body magnets placed. I should note that I'm getting a decent amount of super glue and marker on my fingers. I'm gonna wipe that off later with some acetone, but if you want, you can always wear gloves for this. So let's take a brief break while those fully dry, and then we'll move on to placing the lid magnets. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the lid. Now the lid needs to have magnets positioned in the opposite orientation of the body, right? Of course, we want the lid to stick directly onto the body. So an easy way to figure out your orientation here, I just realized I pre-marked a magnet that's probably not going to be in the correct orientation for the lid. So I will put this one off to the side where it won't get in the way. So a very easy way to figure out the correct orientation here is just pop a magnet onto one of these magnets already embedded and then mark the top of it. That's going to tell you which side goes into the lid so that it will stick to the body. And now I'm going to pluck that off if I can. There we go, and I'll stick it back on my stack of magnets, and I need to find the side where the mark faces out, and so that's the side I'm going to mark on all of my magnets. So there are 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 magnets in total on the lid. Let's go ahead and mark them all. Okay, all of our lid magnets are marked, so let's go ahead and place them, marked side down, into the lid. These are just going to fit into these indentations all around the edge of the lid. Okay, that's all of our lid magnets placed. I'm going to set this to the side and take a momentary break before we move on to placing magnets in our light traps. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to putting the magnets in our light traps. So the light traps are going to use smaller magnets than the body. They're going to use these little 3x1 millimeter magnets. So the way that I like to do this is just take 3 of our small magnets and place them on the magnets in the body. Now we're going to mark the side facing up, because what we want is for the light trap, when it's finished, to repel from the body magnets. So if we place the marked sides into the light trap, they attract this side of the magnet, which means they will repel this side of the magnets, which is exactly what we want. So now we can take our light trap, and it's got 3 indentations on the bottom specifically for these magnets. So you do want to make sure that if there's any excess in these, any elephant's foot or any hanging layer lines, you just want to trim those real quick. And you also might want to trim the magnet spaces if they've gotten a little bit constrained by elephant's foot. Just make it easier to fit the magnets in. Check the ends as well. These don't have to be pretty because they're going to be kind of trapped inside the plate holder, but they do, of course, need to be functional because they're going to be fitting into a very tight space. We want to make sure there's nothing hanging out that could get in the way. Okay, that takes care of that. Now I'm going to put a little dab of glue in the magnet spot here. Boom. And then I'll just pluck a magnet out with my tweezers and pop it right into here. Use my finger to hold it down. Make sure to get these magnets nice and centered in the light trap so that it will fit in as well as possible. Let's put in number 2. Manipulating these tiny magnets, of course, can be a little bit tricky. Just gotta make sure we get these nice and centered, glued down into their positions. And within a few seconds, the glue should start to set and hold them in place. Okay, that's all 3 magnets placed in that light trap, and let's do the second one now. We can just fast forward through this one now that we've seen how it works once. Okay, magnets are glued in place on both of our light traps, and we'll now take the first one, which should be pretty well set up by now. And I'm just going to use this to demonstrate the mechanism. So, in your body_bottom .stl pieces, you're going to want to make sure that these troughs on the bottom of the body that the light traps fit into are clear of any debris, any fallen or misplaced layer lines, any elephant's foot, anything that could keep the light trap from fitting smoothly in here, because this is going to be a pretty tight fit, and it's very important the light traps move freely. Because what these light traps do is they fit into this space. Oops. That one flipped over on me. But right on the other side of this space is the magnets that hold the lid down. So what happens when we place the light trap in here is that those magnets repel it and push it upwards. So we don't want that to get trapped. Make sure there's no stray filament in there that it can get stuck on. What we want is for this to be completely free to pop in and out. And now, of course, when this is just sitting here unbounded, what happens is if we let go, it pops right out and flips over. But the way that this is actually going to be installed is that the light trap will be inserted, and then the body_top component will be placed on top, and then the light trap becomes captive in between the 2 pieces. So at the moment, it is basically acting like a spring-loaded shutter, but with no springs. It's always going to be pushed up into the body top. And now if we slide something in there, it pushes out of the way. And as soon as we pull that something back out, it pops right back into place. Now, critically, these light traps, and this may or may not show up well on camera, but they have one side on the top that has a bevel on it. And that bevel always needs to face forward towards the front of the plate holder. If it doesn't, if you install it backwards, it will be impossible to insert a dark slide because it will just run into the flat edge of the light trap and it will be blocked. But if you put the beveled edge forward, then it acts as kind of a wedge, and the dark slide will interface with that and it will push the light trap down into the well, allowing it to proceed through. And then when it gets pulled out again, the light trap will just pop right back up. So let me make sure that both of these wells are clear, and then we can go ahead and glue our entire holder together. I think the reason that these prints are a little bit messy is because I printed them on a full bed. I printed the entire 4x5 plate holder at once, and that means much longer layer times, which means more time for the plastic to cool in between layers, which I think tends to lead to poorer overhangs and more of these bits of hanging filament that I end up carving out with a razor knife. So you may find that it makes your life a little bit easier if you print this one piece at a time, or if you just have really good cooling. Of course, this was printed in ABS, which doesn't help either. So let's go ahead and glue our body together now. Now, obviously, I can't just put the light trap in and then put this on top, because this will pop out as soon as I let go of it. But you've already seen the trick that we can use here, right? Which is that we just install the light traps, make sure the right side is facing forward, and then we can press them down with a plate. Whoops. That side already got flipped. We can press them down with a plate, and then we can put the body on top, and then we can pull that out. And then you can hear those two click into place. And then we'll be able to push them out of the way, or we should be able to. I might have put one in backwards. Yep, it's facing forward. In we go, in we go. I think this is a little bit has some peeling plastic on the front. Let me pull this ready-made dark slide and use that instead. Get that into place. And then when we pull this, we can hear them both click into place. But when we push this forward, it will push them right out of the way. Bingo. There is our functioning light traps. So let me go ahead and get some glue now. What I'm going to do is just put a nice thin bead of glue all the way around the outer edge of body_bottom.stl. Now, when I've used slower adhesives to assemble other holders, what I like to do is sandwich them between two pieces of plywood and use clamps to hold them flat. Because the super glue acts so fast, that's not really going to work. So I'm going to go with the old put something flat and something heavy on top approach. So here are our light traps. Pop these into place. hold them down with this dark slide. And I will seat the top of the body. And I'm going to head over here. Put something flat on top of our holder. And then on top of that something flat, I'm going to put something heavy, like this box of Cat 5 cable that I just happen to have on hand. Maybe a couple extra kilos of filament. And that should keep that nice and flat until the glue is fully dried. So with that, we're going to take a little break, let that seal up, and then we will go ahead and wrap up once it's finished. Okay, we should now have our holder fully glued up and set. Let's go ahead and pull this stuff off of the top. Now we can take a look at our fully glued up shell. We also never checked the lid, so we can take a look at that as well. And that just pops right into place on the back, and we've got these little finger catches on the sides that we can use to pull it off. But when it's in place, it's a nice strong connection that'll allow us to put some spring pressure on the plate to keep it held up against the front of the holder without losing grip on the back of the lid. So there we go. And then we've got our dark slide right here, which we can just kind of wiggle in the top. I think the fact that these light traps printed a little bit rough doesn't help. It probably would have been for the best if I had sanded them a little bit before putting them in here. That's something you might want to do with yours, but it is working just fine. They're going to pop out of the way. Sorry, they're going to slide out of the way, let the dark slide in, and then when we pull it out, they pop right back into place. And so now the last thing we're going to want to do here is place our retaining tab. So let's just make sure that this actually fits before we install it. It looks like it is good. So we go ahead and put a little bit of glue in here, all the way across. And we'll just set that in place. Let the glue grab onto it, and there is our magnet-powered 4x5 plate holder. Perfect. Cool, so hopefully that helps. Best of luck with assembling and using your own copies of this design. I hope it will be useful to y'all. I hope it works out really well. So just in summary, be very careful placing your magnets. I highly recommend marking the side to place face down every time, just to make sure we don't make any mistakes in alignment. Make sure that you properly clean out any loose filament or elephant's foot that might get in the way of the light trap slots, and also clear off the light traps themselves of any bulging or elephant's foot or anything else that could impede their travel. And it doesn't hurt to sand off the bevel a little bit just to make it easier for the dark slide to slide into place. So with all that in mind, go forth, make your own, good luck, and have a great day, everyone.